This is a story about power, betrayal, family, and the kind of justice that doesn't just punish, it reveals. So settle in, because this is going to be a journey. Let me take you back to where it all began. Picture a dining room that costs more than most people's houses. A table so long you could seat 20 people and still have room for their egos. This is the home of General Marcus Vance, a man who had spent his entire life building an image of power, discipline, and control. The walls were lined with oil paintings of ancestors who had probably done terrible things and gotten away with them. Dark wood, cold stone, expensive silence, everything in that room was designed to make you feel small. And at the far end of that table sat Evelyn Vance, the youngest daughter, the problem, the one who knew too much. She held a glass of water in her hand and watched. That's what she did best, watch. While everyone else performed their roles, Evelyn observed. Her mother Lydia was cutting her sea bass into pieces so small it looked like she was trying to destroy it personally. Every cut was precise, controlled, the way she did everything. Lydia had perfected the art of looking exhausted instead of guilty, of appearing wounded instead of responsible. She was the kind of woman who had learned long ago that tears were more effective than truth, and that silence could be weaponized. Caroline, the older sister, sat across the table smiling too much. Her smile was like everything else about her, carefully constructed, practiced in mirrors, designed to create whatever impression she needed. She had been performing for so long that Evelyn wasn't sure she even remembered what genuine emotion felt like. And then there was Julian Mercer, Caroline's fiancé, the man who had somehow convinced everyone he was the answer to all their problems. He was handsome in that generic rich guy way, good suit, expensive watch, the kind of smile that made you feel like he was selling you something even when he wasn't. But Evelyn noticed things other people missed. She noticed the second phone he kept hidden under the edge of the tablecloth, near his thigh. A burner phone, cheap case, screen dark. He'd tilt it just enough to read incoming messages, then lock it fast. Subtle if you weren't paying attention. But Evelyn was always paying attention. Julian caught her looking once. He smiled the way men smile when they think money has replaced character. "Everything okay, Evelyn?" he asked, his voice smooth, concerned, performative. "Perfect," she said. "I always enjoy family dinners that feel like depositions." Her father didn't laugh. He never laughed when she was funny. Marcus Vance had forgotten how to laugh somewhere along the way, probably around the same time he decided that ambition was more important than integrity. He set down his fork and leaned back in his chair, the movement controlled, deliberate, like everything he did. "Can we get through one meal without that tone?" he asked. Evelyn looked at him steadily. "That depends," she said. "Can everyone else get through one meal without lying?" The silence that followed was heavy, not uncomfortable heavy. The difference matters. Uncomfortable silence is when people don't know what to say. Heavy silence is when people know exactly what they're hiding. Her mother closed her eyes for one tired second, her favorite move. It was elegant, really. A small gesture that said, "I'm exhausted by this," without having to say anything at all. It tested better than defending herself. It looked noble instead of complicit. Caroline stepped in right on cue. "She's been like this all week," she said, her voice soft, concerned, the perfect worried sister. She delivered the line like she'd rehearsed it. Maybe she had. There it was, Evelyn thought. Caroline had always been good at this, performing concern while planting seeds of doubt. She never attacked directly. That would be too obvious, too easy to defend against. Instead, she worried. She cared. She expressed gentle, loving concern about her sister's mental state. It was brilliant, really. You can't fight concern without looking defensive. You can't argue with worry without seeming unstable. And that was exactly the point. "I'm serious," Caroline continued, pressing her advantage. "Mom, tell him. She called me 3 times 2 nights ago saying people were following her." Evelyn looked at her sister with something that wasn't quite respect but wasn't quite disgust either. It was recognition. She knew what Caroline was doing and she understood how effective it would be. "No," Evelyn said calmly. "I called you once. I asked why your fiancé's shell company was wired into a defense subcontractor in Virginia." The room went still. That was the thing about truth. It didn't need to be loud to be devastating. Her father's jaw tightened. Julian reached for his wine and missed the stem the first time. It was a small thing, a tiny crack in his composure, but Evelyn noticed. She noticed everything. Caroline gave her a sad little smile, the kind that said, "See, this is exactly what I mean." She was good, Evelyn had to admit, very good. "This is exactly what I mean," Caroline said, playing her role perfectly. The paranoia, the obsession, she twists normal things into these huge conspiracies. She turned to their parents, including them in her performance. "Right," Evelyn didn't blink. "Because men with burner phones and offshore transfers usually sell scented candles," she said. The sarcasm was sharp, but the accusation underneath was sharper. Julian Mercer wasn't a businessman. He was a fixer, a middleman, someone who moved money and information through channels that weren't supposed to exist. Her mother finally spoke. "Evelyn, enough." Her voice had that polished donor luncheon tone, soft, controlled, empty. The voice she used when she wanted to sound reasonable while dismissing something that mattered. Her father folded his napkin with military precision, the motion controlled but furious. He was in the middle of a Senate campaign, and every meal lately felt like damage control. Evelyn wasn't a daughter anymore. She was a liability, a potential headline, something to be managed. "Julian is helping fund this family's future," he said, his voice hard. "You will treat him with respect." Evelyn looked at Julian steadily. "That depends on what country he's loyal to." Nobody moved. That question hung in the air like smoke. It wasn't an accusation, it was worse. It was a challenge, a suggestion that everyone in that room already knew the answer but was pretending not to. Caroline let out a breath like she'd been dreading this moment, which was impressive considering she'd spent the whole evening trying to create it. "She did it again this morning," Caroline said quietly, her voice pitched to carry just the right amount of worried disappointment. "She told one of the staff not to leave their kids alone near me because I was managing optics." She turned to their parents, making sure they saw her distress. "Do you hear how crazy that sounds?" "It sounds accurate," Evelyn said. Caroline turned to their parents instead of answering her. That was her strategy, never engage directly if she could perform sideways. "I've tried to protect her," Caroline said, her voice breaking slightly. "I really have." Evelyn almost smiled at that. The line was new. She'd practiced it. The wounded sister, the one who had done everything she could, who was forced into this terrible position by circumstances beyond her control. It was a good performance. Caroline had gotten better over the years. "You should save some energy, Caroline," Evelyn said. "Fake concern burns calories." Caroline blinked hard, then looked down. Perfect timing. A little wounded, a little noble. She could have taught master classes in manipulative grief. Julian cleared his throat, playing his role now too. "Maybe this isn't the night." "No," Caroline said softly, "it is." Then she looked at Evelyn with wet eyes that had never once matched what she actually felt. "You scared me last week, Evelyn." Evelyn leaned back in her chair. "Did I? Or did I get too close to something you wanted buried?" Her father's hand hit the table. Hard. The silverware jumped. Her mother flinched. One of the servants froze in the doorway and then disappeared. The room went still. This was the Marcus Vance that people feared, the general, the man who had spent decades learning how to command. He pointed at Evelyn like she was a junior officer embarrassing him in front of command. "You have been unstable for months," he said, his voice controlled but sharp. "Mood swings, accusations, aggression. You refuse help. You refuse reason. Every conversation turns into some fantasy about surveillance and corruption." Evelyn looked at him for a long second. Then she said, "That's a strong speech for a man who never asks for proof unless it helps him lie." And then the doorbell rang. Nobody reacted with surprise except her mother, and even hers looked rehearsed. Late. That told Evelyn everything she needed to know. Julian sat up straighter. Caroline inhaled fast but hid it behind one trembling hand. Her father didn't turn toward the foyer right away. He just stared at Evelyn with the cold patience of a man waiting for a problem to be removed by staff. A few seconds later, their house manager entered the dining room, pale and careful. "Sir," he said to her father. "They're here." Her mother looked down at her lap. Caroline whispered, "Thank God." Two large male paramedics walked in first. Clean uniforms, soft restraints in hand, calm faces. Behind them came a uniformed police officer with that neutral look cops use when they've already been told who the unstable one is. The officer addressed the room, not Evelyn. "We received a mental health welfare request." Of course he did. Caroline stood so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Then she covered her mouth and started crying on command. Evelyn had to give her credit. It was a strong performance, not truthful, just well lit. She came toward Evelyn slowly, tears on her cheeks, one hand stretched out like she was approaching a wounded animal. "Evelyn," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I have to do this to save you. You're not well, you're a danger to yourself." Evelyn looked past her at their parents. Her father stood near the head of the table with both hands behind his back. He didn't defend her, didn't question the timing, didn't ask to speak privately. Her mother stayed seated and turned her face away like this was all too painful to witness, which was convenient since she'd helped arrange it. That was the moment the room got honest. Not because anyone told the truth, but because nobody bothered hiding the lie anymore. The officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Caroline started crying harder. "Please don't fight them, Evelyn. Please, we all love you." Evelyn let that hang there. Love. That word had done more criminal work in this family than money ever had. One of the paramedics moved carefully toward her. "We're going to make this easy," Evelyn almost asked. "Easy for who?" Instead, she pushed her chair back and stood on her own. That stopped everyone. No screaming, no panic, no overturned plates, no dramatic denial. If she wanted to act unstable, she had a full room of examples. But she wasn't interested in performance anymore. She brushed a speck of dust off her shoulder, set her napkin on the table, and held out both wrists. The paramedic hesitated. "Go ahead," she said. He wrapped the soft restraints around her wrists with professional caution. Not rough, not kind, just procedural. The officer watched her like she'd changed genres in the middle of a movie. Caroline's crying faded for half a second. There it was confusion, small but real. She expected rage. She expected begging. She expected something she could point to later and call proof. What she got was compliance. Julian looked at Evelyn now, really looked at her, and she saw the first crack in him. Tiny hairline, but there. Evelyn met Caroline's eyes. She still had that wet-faced, grieving sister act going, but underneath it, tucked deep in the corner of her mouth, was a smile. Small, mean, private. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd just removed the unstable younger sister who kept asking the wrong questions. She thought once the paperwork hit the system, nobody would listen to anything Evelyn said again. She thought a psych hold would bury her credibility, protect Julian's contracts, and keep their father's campaign clean. She thought she had planned the perfect trap. What Caroline didn't know was that being taken to a psychiatric facility was never her idea. It was Evelyn's. And the second those restraints clicked into place, she stopped being the architect of this evening. She became the bait. The restraints came off, and the door sealed behind Evelyn with a soft click that sounded a lot like a lock she had been waiting for. Oak Ridge Private Psychiatric Facility didn't look like a prison if you only glanced at the brochure version of it. Clean hallways, neutral colors, staff trained to speak in calm, measured tones, everything designed to make control feel like care. The isolation room told the truth. No sharp edges, foam-lined walls, reinforced glass panel on the door, a camera fixed high in the corner, no personal items, no phone, no access to anything that could reach the outside world. They took her watch. They took her shoes. They checked her sleeves, her collar, her waistband. Standard intake, thorough, but not thorough enough. The nurse assigned to her spoke like she was reading from a script. "You'll be observed for your safety. A doctor will evaluate you in the morning." "For my safety," Evelyn repeated. She nodded like she believed it. Evelyn sat on the bed after they left. Thin mattress, bolted frame, the kind of setup that made people feel smaller without realizing why. She leaned back, looked up at the camera, and stayed still for a few seconds. Then she smiled. They thought they had removed her access. What they had actually done was remove noise. No phones tracking location, no external surveillance, no variables she didn't control. For the first time in weeks, she was operating inside a closed system. She swung her legs off the bed and pressed her heel lightly against the frame. The insert inside her shoe wasn't there anymore. Good. That meant it was still exactly where she needed it. Hours passed, no interruptions, no sedation. They were waiting for a formal evaluation before pushing anything into her bloodstream. That told Evelyn that Caroline had filed this as a controlled admission, not an emergency override. She wanted paperwork. She wanted a diagnosis on record. She wanted something permanent. Around what Evelyn guessed was early evening, the door opened. Caroline walked in first. No tears this time. Julian followed behind her, closing the door like he belonged there. The nurse gave Evelyn one last look, then stepped out and shut it behind them. She heard the lock engage. Caroline stood there for a second just looking at her. Then she smiled. Not the soft, concerned version from dinner. This one was clean, sharp, honest. "There you are," she said. Evelyn didn't move. "You dropped the performance fast." Caroline laughed under her breath. "I didn't think you'd notice. I always notice when you stop pretending to be human." Julian shifted his weight, uncomfortable, but trying not to show it. He kept his hands in his pockets like he didn't trust what to do with them. Caroline walked closer and tossed a folder onto the bed beside Evelyn. "Go ahead," she said. "Read your future." Evelyn didn't reach for it right away. She just looked at her. "Confident," she said. "I earned it," Caroline replied. Evelyn picked up the folder and flipped it open. Fabricated psychiatric evaluations, witness statements, behavioral notes, all aligned, all consistent, all written in the same tone that made lies feel clinical. Paranoid ideation, delusional fixation, escalating instability. Clean work. "You spent time on this," Evelyn said. Caroline crossed her arms. "I had help." Evelyn glanced at Julian. He didn't deny it. Caroline stepped closer, lowering her voice like they were sharing something intimate. "Julian is about to sign a $500 million contract with the Department of Defense," she said. "Do you understand what that means?" "It means someone didn't vet him properly," Evelyn said. Caroline ignored that. "It means everything you've been digging into becomes irrelevant," she continued. "Because now you're not a credible source. You're a diagnosed paranoid with a documented history of delusions." Julian finally spoke. "Your reports won't hold weight, not after this." Evelyn closed the folder and set it beside her. "And the conservatorship?" she asked. Caroline smiled again, slower this time. "There it is," she said. "You figured it out." Julian nodded like he was explaining a business plan. "Medical guardianship temporary at first, then extended. Control over your finances, your military retirement accounts, your assets, everything you earned." Caroline added, "Managed by people who actually know how to use it." Evelyn looked at her. "You mean you?" She didn't even pretend to deny it. "Yes," she said. Silence settled in the room for a second, not tense, just clear. Caroline tilted her head slightly. "You should be angry or scared or something." "I'm thinking," Evelyn said. "About what?" "How predictable this is." Julian exhaled, irritated. "You're in a locked room, no phone, no access. No one outside this facility is going to take you seriously after tomorrow." Caroline leaned in a little closer. "You lost." Evelyn let that sit there. Then she looked up at the camera in the corner. Black dome, standard internal surveillance, fixed angle, no visible microphone. Caroline followed her gaze and rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, they don't record audio in here, it's for observation." "Of course it is," Evelyn said. She looked back at her. "Your plan is solid," she continued. "On paper." Julian frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means you covered the obvious angles," Evelyn said. "Diagnosis, credibility, financial control, timing." Caroline's smile came back. "There's no other angle that matters." Evelyn nodded once. "That's where you're wrong." She didn't like that. "You're still doing it," she said, that tone like you're 10 steps ahead. "I am," Julian scoffed. "You're sitting in a padded room." "Exactly." Caroline crossed her arms tighter. "Say it clearly, Evelyn. What are you trying to prove?" Evelyn leaned back slightly, keeping her eyes on her. "You built this entire plan assuming containment equals silence," she said. "It does," Julian snapped. "No," Evelyn said calmly. "It just limits direction." Caroline's expression shifted just a fraction. Not fear, not yet, just irritation. "You're not making sense." "I am," Evelyn said. "You're just not listening." She tapped lightly against the side of her heel. "Perfect setup," she continued. "Controlled environment, no external communication, no witnesses who matter." Julian stepped forward a little. "That's the point." Evelyn smiled just enough. "Caroline," she said, "you forgot one thing." She didn't respond right away. "What?" "The walls in psychiatric isolation rooms," Evelyn said, glancing around, "are designed to keep sound from getting out." She stared at her. Evelyn held her gaze. "They're not designed to block data transmission." Silence. Actual silence this time. Julian looked at Caroline. Caroline looked at Evelyn. Then she laughed short, dismissive. "There it is," she said. "That's the delusion they warned us about." Julian shook his head. "You really think what?" "There's some signal getting out of here." Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't need to. Caroline stepped back, recovering fast. "This is why you're here," she said. "You hear yourself, right?" Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "Do you?" That was enough. She turned toward the door, already done with the conversation. "Enjoy the evaluation tomorrow," she said over her shoulder. "By the time you're officially diagnosed, none of this will matter." Julian gave Evelyn one last look. Not confident anymore, not calm, just uncertain. Then they left. The door shut. The lock clicked. Evelyn waited 5 seconds, 10. Then she reached down and pressed her thumb into the seam inside her heel. The thin layer of synthetic skin peeled back clean. Underneath it, exactly where she left it, was a micro-transceiver no bigger than a grain of rice. She held it between her fingers for a moment. Then she smiled. Caroline thought she had just sealed her in. What she actually did was give her the quietest command center she could have asked for, and she walked out of that room thinking Evelyn was the one losing control. Evelyn rolled the chip between her fingers until she heard footsteps outside her door. It went back into place under her heel in one smooth motion. By the time the lock clicked open, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, hands relaxed, posture neutral, calm, patient, no resistance, no urgency. The nurse didn't meet her eyes this time. "Dr. Thorne will see you now," she said. Of course, he would. Evelyn stood up and followed her out into the hallway. Same clean lines, same controlled quiet, staff moving with purpose but never fast enough to look stressed. Everything designed to feel safe while decisions got made about you without you. They stopped at an office halfway down the corridor. She opened the door and stepped aside. "Go in," Evelyn did. Dr. Aries Thorne sat behind a wide desk with a tablet in front of him and a paper file open beside it. Mid-50s, clean haircut, controlled posture, the kind of man who had spent his entire career believing he was the smartest person in every room. He didn't stand when Evelyn walked in. That told her more than his credentials ever would. "Evelyn," he said like they were meeting at a conference instead of a locked facility. "Please have a seat." She sat. He glanced down at the file, flipped a page, then looked at her with a measured expression. "I've reviewed the intake notes provided by your family," he said. "There's a consistent pattern here. Reports of paranoia, fixation on surveillance, accusations that don't align with verified reality." Evelyn didn't respond. He kept going. "Former military personnel sometimes experience difficulty adjusting after service," he said. "It's not uncommon to develop." "Stop." He blinked once, not used to being interrupted. "Excuse me." Evelyn leaned back slightly in the chair. "Before you finish that sentence," she said, "before you write anything down and definitely before you authorize any medication, I need you to open your computer." He frowned. "That's not how this works." "It is today." His expression tightened. "Evelyn, this isn't a negotiation. I'm here to evaluate your condition. And I'm giving you a chance to not destroy your career in the next 5 minutes." That landed, not enough to convince him, enough to irritate him. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "You're reinforcing the exact behavior described in your file," he said. "Grandiosity, control issues, deflection." Evelyn nodded once. "Open the computer," she repeated. "No." She watched him for a second. Then she spoke slower. "Your license, your facility, your personal liability, all of it is about to be tied to a federal violation if you don't listen to me right now." He almost smiled, almost. "Do you hear how that sounds?" he asked. "Do you understand how real it is?" Evelyn replied. Silence. He looked at her, trying to decide whether this was worth indulging or shutting down. Curiosity won, it usually did. He turned slightly, tapped a key, and woke his computer screen. "Fine," he said. "Let's entertain this. What exactly am I supposed to do?" "Log into your system," Evelyn said. He did. "Now open a browser." He hesitated for half a second, then followed through. "Type this exactly," she said. He waited. "Don't use the social security number in that file," she added, nodding toward the folder Caroline gave him. "It's fake." His eyes flicked to the folder, then back to her. "Type the address," she said. Evelyn gave him a secure DoD portal URL. He paused again. "You're asking me to access a federal system without authorization," he said. "You already did something worse," she replied. "This just tells you how bad it is." That got him moving. He typed it in. The login screen appeared, clean, black, official. Now he was paying attention. "What credentials am I using?" he asked. Evelyn gave him a 12-character alphanumeric string. He didn't type it right away. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Evelyn looked at him. "Doctor," she said, "you're about 3 seconds away from answering your own question." That was enough. He entered the code, hit enter. The screen didn't load like a normal system. It flashed once, then everything went red. A black window expanded over the entire display. No branding, no loading icon, just text. Top secret SCI clearance, Agent EVELYNVANCE active status. Do not detain. Report any interference immediately. A federal seal locked into place at the top of the screen. No animation, no delay, just authority. Dr. Thorne's hand froze on the keyboard. Then he slowly leaned forward. Evelyn watched his face change in real time. Confidence to confusion, confusion to recognition, recognition to fear. The pen slipped out of his fingers and hit the desk. He didn't pick it up. His mouth opened slightly like he was about to say something, then stopped. Sweat started forming at his hairline. He read the screen again, then again, like repetition might change what it said. It didn't. You, he started, then stopped. Evelyn didn't help him. He swallowed hard. He tried again. Keep reading, Evelyn said. He did. Every line made it worse because now he understood the part that mattered, not who she was, but what he had already done. He had admitted her under false documentation, signed off on her containment, restricted her movement, prepared to medicate her, all while she was flagged as an active federal asset illegally detained. The room got very quiet. He pushed his chair back slightly like distance might help him think. It didn't. He looked at her now. Really looked, not as a patient, not as a problem, as a liability. I didn't know, he said quickly. The file, your family, I know exactly what they told you, Evelyn said. His breathing got sharper. I need to report this, he said. I need to contact, he reached for his phone. Evelyn stood up fast enough to stop him. Her hand came down over his, pressing the phone flat against the desk. He froze. Not yet, she said. He looked up at her like she had just made things worse. Not yet, he repeated. Do you understand what this is? Yes, Evelyn said. Do you? He swallowed again. They're going to, this is, if I don't report, you will, Evelyn said. Just not today. He stared at her, processing, failing, trying again. You're asking me to delay reporting a federal violation, he said. I'm telling you to correct one, Evelyn replied. His hand twitched under hers. She didn't move. You have two options, she continued. You call this in right now, and this turns into a legal mess that drags your name through every layer of review. His face tightened. Or, Evelyn said, you listen carefully, follow instructions, and in 24 hours this entire situation resolves in a way where you look like the doctor who cooperated. He didn't answer because he was doing the math. Risk versus outcome, immediate exposure versus controlled damage. What do you want? He asked finally. There it was. Evelyn removed her hand from his and stepped back. I want you to continue exactly as planned, she said. His head snapped up. What? Same evaluations, same notes, same behavior, Evelyn said. You treat me like every other patient in this room. That makes no sense. It will, he shook his head. I can't just pretend you already did, Evelyn cut in. You just didn't know who you were pretending with. That shut him up. He looked back at the screen one more time, then at her. You're running something, he said slowly. Yes, and you need to stay here to do it. Yes, he exhaled through his nose, trying to steady himself. This is insane. Evelyn almost smiled. No, she said, this is controlled. He sat there for a second longer. Then he reached forward and closed the laptop. Not slammed, not rushed. Deliberate, decision made. 24 hours, he said. Exactly, Evelyn replied. He nodded once, still pale, still sweating. But now he understood his role, and more importantly, he understood what would happen if he stepped out of it. Evelyn turned toward the door, then paused. One more thing, she said without looking back. Next time someone hands you a perfect story about a broken person, ask who benefits from it. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Evelyn walked out of his office like she belonged there because now she did. And behind her, Dr. Aries Thorne sat very still, realizing he wasn't in control of this facility anymore. He was just the first man who figured it out. Evelyn stepped out of Dr. Thorne's office and saw her father before he saw her. He was standing at the end of the hallway with his lawyer exactly where authority likes to stand out in the open, visible, controlled, still in a tailored suit, posture straight, chin slightly raised like he was about to brief a room full of officers instead of corner his own daughter in a psychiatric facility. For a second, she just watched him. General Marcus Vance, the man who used to teach her that discipline wasn't about control, it was about restraint. Now he looked like a man who had traded both for funding. He turned when he heard her footsteps. No relief, no concern, just irritation that the problem was still walking. "There you are," he said. "No, are you okay?" "No, we need to talk." Just confirmation that the asset hadn't been removed yet. His lawyer gave Evelyn a quick scan, clinical, detached, already calculating how unstable she would look in a courtroom. "Have a seat," her father said, nodding toward an empty consultation room. Evelyn walked in without arguing, not because he told her to, because she wanted to see how far he was willing to go. They sat across from each other at a small table. The lawyer stayed standing just off to the side, like background support in a negotiation that wasn't supposed to fail. Her father didn't waste time. He pulled a folder out of his briefcase and dropped it onto the table in front of her. "Sign it," he said. Evelyn didn't touch it. "What is it?" she asked, even though she already knew. "Transfer of trust assets," he said. "Medical guardianship authorization temporary pending review." "Temporary," Evelyn repeated. His jaw tightened. "Don't start." Evelyn opened the folder. Clean documents, professionally drafted, already prepared for submission. Her name typed in multiple places. His name positioned where control needed to be, and at the bottom a blank line waiting for her signature. She looked up at him. "You came all the way here for paperwork," she said. "I came here to fix this," he replied. "No," Evelyn said calmly. "You came here to contain it." His eyes hardened. "Julian is backing my campaign," he said. "There are donors watching. There are timelines. There are consequences if this gets out of control." Evelyn nodded slightly. "There it is." He leaned forward. "This is bigger than you." "That's the problem," Evelyn said. "You think everything is." His hand flattened on the table. "You are in a psychiatric facility because of your own behavior," he said. "Accusations, instability, you've created a situation where no one can trust your judgment." Evelyn held his gaze. "You never asked for proof," she said. "Not once." "Because there isn't any." "There is," Evelyn said. "You just don't want to see it." He exhaled sharply, losing patience. "I don't have time for this," he said. "Sign the document. Let us manage this quietly. You'll get treatment. You'll stabilize, and this family can move forward." "This family?" Evelyn looked at him for a long second, then she leaned back in her chair. "You really believe that?" she said. "I know it," he replied. Evelyn shook her head once. "No," she said. "You know exactly what you're doing." The room went still. The lawyer shifted slightly but didn't interrupt. Evelyn tapped the document lightly with one finger. "You're not protecting me," she continued. "You're protecting him." Her father didn't deny it. That was new. "You're protecting your campaign," she added. "Your donors, your timeline, your reputation, and you're threatening all of it," he said. "No," Evelyn said. "I'm exposing it." That hit. He straightened in his chair, voice tightening. "You are not in a position to expose anything," he said. "Not from inside this place." Evelyn almost smiled. "That's where you're wrong." He ignored it. "Sign the document," he said again, slower now. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Evelyn looked down at the paper, then back at him. "You used to tell me something," she said, "when I was a kid." He didn't respond. "Never negotiate from a position of weakness," she continued. "Remember that." His eyes narrowed slightly. "This isn't a negotiation," he said. "It is," Evelyn replied. "You're just pretending it isn't." She reached for the pen he had placed on the table. Mont Blanc. Heavy, expensive, the kind of pen people buy when they want signatures to feel important. She rolled it once between her fingers. The lawyer leaned in just a fraction, ready. Her father watched her hand, waiting. Evelyn lowered the pen to the paper, paused, then pressed hard. The nib dug into the page, releasing a thick blot of ink that spread across the signature line. Not a name, not even close, just pressure, just intent. Then she lifted the pen slightly and pressed her thumb directly into the ink, held it there for a second, let it set. When she pulled her hand away, a clean fingerprint sat right across the document. Dark, clear, impossible to ignore. Her father's expression snapped. "What are you doing?" he said sharply. Evelyn set the pen down. "Leaving a mark," she said. "That's not a signature." "I know." He pushed the paper toward her again. "Sign it properly." Evelyn didn't move. Instead, she looked at him the way she used to look at him when she was younger, when she still thought he meant what he said. "You're a general," she said. His jaw tightened again. "Marcus," she corrected. "You should know the basic rule." He didn't answer. Never negotiate with someone holding the nuclear codes. Silence, real silence this time. The lawyer looked between them, suddenly unsure if this was still a simple paperwork situation. Her father stood up so fast the chair scraped back hard against the floor. "This is over," he said. "It was over the moment you walked in here with that document." Evelyn replied. He slammed his hand on the table. You will stay here until you're declared stable, he said. And when that happens, everything you've tried to build against this family will be gone. Evelyn held his gaze. Try it! That was enough for him. He grabbed the folder, barely glancing at the ink stain and the fingerprint, and turned toward the door. Come on, he snapped at the lawyer. They walked out without another word. The door shut behind them. Evelyn stayed seated for a few seconds. Then she exhaled slowly and leaned back. No anger, no disappointment, just clarity. There had been a version of her years ago that thought someone in that family might hesitate, might question, might choose differently if the line got crossed. That version was gone. No one was manipulated. No one was confused. They all knew exactly what they were doing. And now so did she. She stood up and walked back toward her room, calm, steady, already moving to the next step. Because the moment that document left this building, it stopped being a tool against her. It became a trigger. The fingerprint she left behind wasn't just ink. It was treated, layered with a compound that would stay invisible until it passed through a standard bank-grade scanner. The kind used for processing legal transfers. The kind her father's lawyer would absolutely use. And when it did, every account tied to that document, every linked financial channel, every hidden route Julian thought he buried would lock. Not locally, globally. Her father thought he had just secured control. What he actually carried out of that room was a dead switch, and he was about to hand it directly to the system himself. Evelyn watched the second hand on the wall clock hit 12 and didn't move until it passed. Timing matters when you're about to ruin someone's day. Dr. Thorne stood near the door of her room, holding his laptop like it weighed more than it should. He hadn't slept well. You could see it in the way he blinked too often and kept pressing his lips together like he was trying to hold something in. Are you sure about this? He asked. No, Evelyn said. I'm certain. He stepped inside and closed the door behind her, locked it, checked it again, then walked over and set the laptop on the small desk bolted to the wall. I shouldn't even be in here with this, he said. You shouldn't have admitted me either, Evelyn replied. He didn't argue. That was progress. He opened the laptop and logged in. Secure system, hospital network, layered with his own credentials. Not military grade, but enough for what Evelyn needed once she bridged it. His hands hovered over the keyboard. If this gets traced back, it won't, Evelyn said. That's not what I'm worried about. Evelyn looked at him. I know, she said. You're worried about what happens if it doesn't work. He didn't deny it. Evelyn pulled the chair closer and sat down. Step back, she said. He did. She placed her hands on the keyboard and started typing. No hesitation, no wasted movement. The commands came fast, clean, precise. The kind of typing that doesn't look impressive unless you know exactly what you're watching. Thorne stayed quiet. He had stopped asking questions. Smart. Evelyn accessed the network through a layered route, piggybacked through a secure channel she had already opened the night before. The chip had done its job. The path was there. All she needed now was a terminal. The hospital system became a doorway, and beyond that, everything else. You were never really here, Thorne said quietly, more to himself than to her. I never left, Evelyn replied. She pulled up the flag document ID tied to her father's transfer paper. There it was processed, scanned, logged exactly as expected. She leaned back slightly, then typed the command that mattered. Execution string loaded, trigger linked, authorization confirmed. Once I hit this, she said, not looking at him. There's no undo. He swallowed. What exactly happens? Reality, Evelyn said. Then she pressed enter. The system responded instantly. No delay, no loading bar, just a silent acknowledgement that something very large had just been set in motion. She closed the laptop halfway and leaned back. It's done, she said. Thorne stared at the screen like it might explain itself. It doesn't look like anything happened. It did, Evelyn said. You just don't see it from here. Across the city, inside a glass-walled conference room 20 floors above the ground, Julian Mercer was about to find out. He sat at the head of the table, suit perfect, posture confident, the kind of man who believed money protected him from consequences. Caroline sat to his right, holding a glass of champagne she hadn't touched yet. She liked the image more than the drink. 2 executives sat across from them, one legal, one financial, both ready, both expecting a clean transaction. $50 million initial transfer, foreign source, structured to look legitimate. Julian adjusted his cuff links and glanced at his watch. She's still in there, he said quietly to Caroline. Caroline smirked. Probably sedated by now. Good, he said. I don't want any noise today. You won't get any, she replied. She's done. The accountant at the far end of the table nodded. We're ready to authorize the transfer. Julian leaned back slightly. Do it. The accountant entered the credentials, confirmed the routing, and reached for the final authorization key. A simple motion, a small click. Then the screen turned red. Not a warning, not a delay, a full stop. Error. Transaction blocked. Account status, frozen. Authority, federal compliance system. The room went quiet. Julian leaned forward. What is that? The accountant frowned, typing quickly. That's not possible. The account was cleared this morning. Fix it, Julian snapped. I'm trying. Caroline set her glass down slowly. Is this a delay? She asked. No, the accountant said. This is a block. Julian's jaw tightened. Call them. The accountant grabbed his phone and dialed the bank directly. Seconds passed. Then he handed the phone to Julian. They want to speak to you. Julian took it. This is Julian Mercer. I'm looking at a blocked transaction on account. The voice on the other end wasn't human, automated, cold. Account access restricted under federal directive. All assets associated with this entity are currently frozen under anti-terrorism and national security enforcement protocols. Julian froze. What? He said. That's not possible. There's been a mistake. No error detected, the voice replied. Further inquiries must be directed through federal channels. The line went dead. Julian stared at the phone, then at the screen, then at the people around him. No, he said under his breath. No, this doesn't happen. The accountant was already trying alternative access points. Everything's locked, he said. Not just this account, all linked accounts, domestic and international. Caroline's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. That's not possible, she said. We separated the structures. They're still tied at a compliance level, the accountant replied. This is a full system freeze. Julian stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. Who did this? He demanded. Nobody answered, because there was only one answer and they both knew it. Caroline's face went pale, not shocked, recognizing. That paper, she said quietly. Julian turned to her. What? The document yesterday, she said. The one Marcus had her touch. Julian's expression shifted, understanding hitting all at once. That wasn't a mistake, he said. Caroline shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. That was a trigger. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Neither of them reacted. Julian grabbed his phone again, dialing a different number this time. No, he muttered. She's locked in a psych ward. She doesn't have access. She can't. He stopped mid-sentence because he realized something worse. She didn't need access. She needed proximity, and they gave it to her. Back in the hospital room, Evelyn watched the reflection of the red system acknowledgement fade off the laptop screen. Dr. Thorne was staring at her now like he finally understood the scale. What did you just do? He asked quietly. Evelyn closed the laptop completely. I corrected a misalignment, she said. That's not a correction, he said. That's a shutdown. Evelyn stood up. Same thing, she replied. He ran a hand over his face. They're going to trace this. They can try. And if they do, Evelyn looked at him, they won't find me, they'll find themselves. He didn't ask what that meant. He didn't want to know. Evelyn walked back toward the bed and sat down like nothing had happened. Because for her, nothing had. This was an escalation. This was step one. Across the city, Julian's control had just collapsed in under 10 seconds. Caroline's plan had already failed before she even understood how it worked. And somewhere between panic and denial, they both arrived at the same question. How does someone locked in a psychiatric facility reach into a federal system and shut down $50 million? They knew the answer. They just didn't want to say it out loud because saying it made it real. And real meant they were no longer in control. Not of the money, not of the narrative. And definitely not of Evelyn. She heard the first shout before she saw anything. Not panic, not confusion, aggression. Male voice, loud, close, not staff. Evelyn didn't move. She stayed seated on the bed, one ankle resting over the other, hands relaxed on her lap. The kind of posture that makes people uncomfortable when they expect fear. Dr. Thorne had just left 10 minutes earlier. He was keeping his distance now, following instructions, staying useful. The hallway noise got louder. Boots fast, heavy. A nurse yelled something about security, then something hit a wall hard. Evelyn tilted her head slightly toward the door, right on time. Another voice cut through the noise. Julian, sharp, controlled, but breaking at the edges. Where is she? No answer. A second later, a scream short, cut off, then silence. Evelyn exhaled slowly. They skipped subtlety. Good, that meant they were scared. Footsteps rushed closer. 4 sets, maybe 5. Weapons, you can hear the difference if you've been around them long enough. The way movement changes, the weight in each step. Caroline's voice came next. Tight, strained, no performance left. She's in isolation. End of the hall. No hesitation, no doubt. She knew exactly where Evelyn was. Of course she did. A lock outside Evelyn's door rattled. Someone tried the handle, didn't work. A second later, impact. The door shook again. Stronger, reinforced, but not built for repeated force from people who didn't care about damage. Third hit, the frame cracked. Fourth, the door flew open. 4 men entered first. Private security, not military, wrong posture, too aggressive. Weapons held like tools instead of extensions, but armed enough to be dangerous in a place like this. Julian came in behind them. Caroline right after. Her face had changed. No tears, no softness, no mask, just anger, raw, focused. You think you're smart, she snapped, stepping into the room. Evelyn didn't answer. One of the guards moved closer, scanning the space like she might disappear. Another one closed the door behind them. Julian stood near the wall, breathing hard but trying to control it. This ends now, he said. Evelyn looked at him. No, she said. It already started. Caroline stepped forward fast, stopping just a few feet from her. You don't get to do this, she said. You don't get to touch our accounts and walk away like nothing happened. Our accounts, Evelyn repeated. She ignored that. You locked everything, she continued. Do you understand what you just did? Yes. You think that makes you powerful? No, Evelyn said. It makes me accurate. That hit something, her jaw clenched. You're not getting out of here, she said. Evelyn glanced at the guards. Then why bring witnesses, she asked. Julian stepped in. Enough, we're done talking. He nodded to one of the men. The guard reached into a small medical kit clipped to his vest and pulled out a syringe, clear liquid. No label, no documentation, just a solution to a problem. Caroline's voice dropped lower, colder. You're going to calm down, she said. One way or another. Evelyn watched the syringe, then looked back at her. Overdose? She asked. She didn't answer, didn't need to. One of the guards moved closer, raising the syringe. You should have stayed quiet, Julian said. Evelyn leaned back slightly against the wall. You should have stayed patient, she replied. The guard grabbed her arm. Firm grip, untrained for restraint. Too much force, too fast. He brought the needle up. Right before it touched her skin, the glass exploded. Not cracked, not shattered, slowly exploded. Every reinforced window along the corridor blew inward at the same time. The sound hit first, then the pressure, then movement. Black figures flooded the space. Fast, precise, coordinated. Delta force doesn't announce itself. It replaces the room. 1 second you think you're in control. The next, you're not even relevant. The first operator hit the ground inside the doorway before the glass finished falling. Second through the window. Third already covering angles. Weapons up. Targets acquired. Not Evelyn, never her. Lasers painted the room in red lines. Julian froze. One guard tried to turn. Too slow. A rifle was already pointed at his chest. Don't move, one of the operators said. Calm, flat, final. The guard holding the syringe dropped it. Hands up. Too late to pretend this was anything but what it was. Caroline didn't move at all. She just stood there, eyes wide, trying to process how fast everything changed. Julian raised his hand slowly. What is this? He said. No one answered him because he wasn't the one in charge of the room anymore. The operators formed a perimeter, not around him, around Evelyn. Clean arc, tight spacing, full coverage, a shield. One of them stepped slightly forward just enough to block any line that wasn't controlled. Area secure, he said. Another voice came through a comms line, calm. Targets contained. Professional, efficient, no wasted words. Evelyn shifted her leg off the bed and stood up. No rush, no reaction, just movement. The room adjusted around her, not the other way around. Julian stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You, he started. Evelyn looked at him. Yes, Caroline finally spoke. What did you do? She asked. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. You brought armed men into a federal operation, she said. What did you think would happen? Her breathing got faster. This isn't real, she said. It is, Evelyn replied. One of the operators stepped closer to Julian, adjusting his aim slightly. Hands higher, he said. Julian complied. No more arguments. No more control, just compliance. Caroline's eyes moved from the soldiers to Evelyn, then back again, trying to find a version of this where she wasn't losing. There wasn't one. You planned this, she said. Evelyn didn't answer. She already knew. Her voice dropped. You used this place, she said slowly. Yes, she shook her head once. You let us put you in here. Yes. Her eyes widened further, understanding finally catching up. You wanted us to come, she said. Evelyn met her gaze. Yes. That was the moment, the exact second it broke for her. Not the money, not the system, not even the soldiers. The realization that none of this was accidental, that every step she took had been anticipated, guided, allowed. Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Julian looked between them, trying to catch up, failing. You set us up, he said. Evelyn didn't deny it. One of the operators moved in and secured the guards. Clean, fast, controlled, no resistance. There wasn't any left. Evelyn stepped forward once, not toward them, just enough to be clear. This isn't extraction, she said. This is containment. Julian's face tightened. For who? He asked. Evelyn looked at him. For you. Silence, heavy, complete. Caroline didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe the way people do when they still think they can fix something. Because now she understood the one thing she hadn't considered. Evelyn wasn't trapped in that room. She was operating from it, and Caroline had just walked herself into the center of it, right where she needed her. Evelyn raised her hand slightly, and every weapon in the room lowered half an inch. Not down, not safe, just enough to shift control. Stand them up, she said. Two operators moved immediately, pulling Julian and his men into position, hands still visible. No sudden movement. Caroline didn't resist. She was past that. Julian looked at Evelyn like he was waiting for the next hit. What now? He asked. Evelyn stepped closer, stopping just outside his reach. Now you fix your schedule, she said. He frowned. What? You have a gala tonight, she continued. Defense contractors, senior officers, press, donors. Caroline blinked. You're serious? Yes, Julian shook his head. We're not going anywhere. Evelyn held his gaze. You are, she said. On time, dressed properly, acting normal. That's not happening, he said. Evelyn didn't raise her voice. You brought armed men into a controlled federal environment, she said. You attempted to assault a protected asset. You can walk into that room tonight, or you can disappear from every system you think protects you. Silence, heavy, he understood. Caroline looked between them. You want us to what? Smile? Yes, she almost laughed. You're insane. No, Evelyn said. I'm consistent. Julian's shoulders dropped slightly. Defeat doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it just looks like a man realizing the math doesn't work anymore. What's the condition? He asked. You attend, Evelyn said. You don't run, you don't warn anyone, you don't cancel, you follow your original plan. And if we don't? Evelyn didn't answer right away. She just looked at the operators behind him. That was enough. He nodded once. Slow, controlled. We'll be there. Good, Evelyn said. She stepped back. Release them. The operators didn't question it. Hands came off. Weapons stayed ready. Julian adjusted his jacket like he could put control back on with it. Caroline didn't move for a second. Then she did, but something in her had shifted. Not fear, not yet. Awareness that this wasn't over, that this was just positioning. Tonight, she said quietly. Yes, Evelyn replied. She nodded once, then turned and walked out. Julian followed. No one stopped them. No one needed to, because now they knew exactly where they had to be, and exactly what would happen if they weren't. That night, the ballroom looked exactly how power likes to present itself. Clean lighting, polished floors, uniforms pressed sharp, conversations controlled and just loud enough to sound important. Over 500 people in the room, military leadership, contractors, political figures, people who signed things that changed outcomes. Her father stood near the center of it. Perfect posture, perfect suit, perfect smile. General Marcus Vance, still campaigning, still convincing people he was the right kind of man to trust. Her mother stood beside him, dressed for sympathy and status at the same time. Lydia Vance, controlled, composed, watching the room like she was managing perception in real time. They looked exactly like they were supposed to: a strong family, a stable image, a narrative that held together. Julian and Caroline stood across the room. They didn't match the setting anymore. Julian held a glass of whiskey, but his hand wasn't steady, not enough to spill, enough to notice if you knew where to look. Caroline smiled at someone in front of her. The smile didn't reach her eyes. It didn't even stay consistent. It flickered, adjusted, reset like she was trying to remember how to perform something she used to control easily. "Relax," she whispered under her breath. Julian didn't look at her. "Don't say that. You're shaking." "I'm not. You are." He tightened his grip on the glass. "I said I'm not." She stopped talking because there was nothing left to fix between them. Not tonight. Across the room, applause started. A speaker wrapped up a segment. More clapping, more smiles, more controlled energy. Everything still looked normal. That was the point. The stage lights dimmed slightly. A voice came over the system. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats." Movement across the room. Chairs adjusted. Conversations lowered, attention shifted forward. Her father guided her mother toward their table, still calm, still in control, still believing whatever he needed to believe to get through the night. Julian sat down. Caroline followed. Neither of them spoke because both of them were waiting. They didn't know for what, just that it was coming. The lights dropped, full blackout. The room went silent. No music, no movement, just darkness. Then a single spotlight cut across the stage. The announcer's voice returned, formal, clear. "Tonight's keynote will be delivered by a representative operating under direct authorization from the Department of Defense." A pause, long enough to build expectation, short enough to hold control. "This individual does not require introduction." Another pause, then, "Please stand." Chairs shifted. Uniforms straightened. Instinct took over. People stood, all of them, even the ones who didn't know why yet. The curtain moved, not fully, just enough. Then Evelyn stepped out, black Class A uniform, medals aligned, ribbons across her chest, everything in place, everything earned. No hesitation, no performance, just presence. The room locked. You can feel it when a room understands rank without being told. Silence changes, breathing changes, posture changes. 500 people stopped being an audience. They became observers. Her father didn't move at first. Then the glass slipped out of his hand. It hit the floor, shattered. He didn't look down. He couldn't. Her mother's face went white, not pale, empty, like something inside her shut off all at once. Julian stood frozen. No control left to fake. Caroline didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move because she understood exactly what she was looking at. Not a mistake, not a coincidence, not a recovery, a reveal. Evelyn stepped forward once. That was enough. Every officer in the room came to attention. Clean, sharp, immediate, no hesitation, no confusion. They knew exactly who they were standing for. No one spoke. No one questioned. Because authority, when it's real, doesn't need explanation. It just needs to show up. And it did. Right in front of them. Right in front of the family that signed her away less than 24 hours ago. Right in front of the people who thought they had already erased her. Evelyn let the silence sit long enough. Then she looked out across the room and then directly at them. Her family still standing, still trying to understand how something they buried was now standing on a stage they couldn't control. Because this wasn't their narrative anymore. This wasn't their room anymore. And for the first time that night, they weren't the ones being watched. They were the ones being seen. Evelyn lifted one hand slightly, and the room held its breath without being told to. No speech, no introduction, no explanation, just a signal. The screen behind her came to life. No logo, no transition, just data. Clean, direct, impossible to misread. A financial routing map filled the display. Lines moved across the screen connecting accounts, countries, shell companies. Each path highlighted in red, each endpoint labeled. Julian Mercer, multiple entries, multiple transfers, dates, times, amounts. 50 million was just one line in a much longer list. The room stayed silent because this wasn't accusation. This was structure. Then the screen shifted. Documents replaced the map. Signed authorizations, digital confirmations, layered approvals. Caroline's name appeared, not once, repeated. Every document clean. Every signature verified. No room for interpretation. Evelyn didn't look at the screen. She looked at them. Julian's face had lost all color. Caroline's hands were locked together so tight her knuckles had gone white. Her father hadn't moved. He was still standing where the glass had shattered at his feet. Still trying to process whether this could be stopped. It couldn't. The screen changed again. Video grainy but clear enough. A private meeting room. Low lighting. Her father sitting across from a man whose face wasn't shown, an envelope on the table. Cash not symbolic, not small enough to matter. Her father didn't hesitate in the video. He didn't question. He didn't refuse. He took it and then he nodded. Agreement without words. The video stopped. The screen went black. The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was recognition, the kind that spreads through a room without anyone needing to speak. Evelyn lowered her hand. That was the cue. Doors opened. Not dramatically, not rushed, controlled. FBI agents entered first, dark suits, visible badges, direct movement. Military police followed behind them. No noise, no hesitation, just execution. The room didn't react right away. People don't move when reality shifts that fast. They wait. They look for someone else to confirm it. No one did. The agents moved through the space with purpose. Straight lines, pre-identified targets. Julian was the first. 2 agents reached him at the same time. "Julian Mercer," one of them said, "you are under arrest for violations of federal law, including unauthorized transfer of classified military data." Julian didn't move, didn't argue, didn't speak because he knew exactly what was on that screen. They turned him, forced his hands behind his back. Cold metal clicked into place. Cuffs, real, final. He reacted then, not with anger, with panic. "This is wrong," he said quickly. "There's been a mistake. I didn't." They pushed him down, face against the table, no resistance left in him. Caroline stepped back, then forward, then stopped again like her body couldn't decide what to do. 2 more agents approached her. "Caroline Vance," one of them said, "you are under arrest for financial crimes, including money laundering and conspiracy." She shook her head immediately. "No," she said. "No, that's not no." They reached for her wrists. That's when she broke. Not controlled, not subtle, real. She dropped to her knees hard. The sound echoed off the marble floor. "Wait," she said, voice shaking. "Wait, please, this isn't." She turned, looked at Evelyn. Not as an equal, not as an opponent, as something she needed. She crawled forward, hands reaching, desperate. Her fingers grabbed the edge of Evelyn's uniform. "Evelyn," she said, voice breaking completely. "Please, please don't do this." Evelyn didn't move. She pulled herself closer, gripping tighter. "I didn't have a choice," she said. "You don't understand. Julian, he pushed this." Evelyn looked down at her, calm, still. She kept going. "We're family," she said. "We're blood. You can't let this happen to me." Her voice cracked on the last word. Not controlled anymore, not performed. Real fear, real collapse. Behind her, agents waited, not rushing, because they knew she wasn't going anywhere. Julian was still pinned to the table. Her father hadn't moved. Her mother stood, frozen, eyes wide, hands locked together like she was holding something that wasn't there anymore. The entire room watched. 500 people. No noise, no interruption, no sympathy, just observation. Caroline tightened her grip on Evelyn's uniform. "Say something," she whispered. "Please." Evelyn took 1 step back. Her hand slipped. She almost fell forward, caught herself, looked up at Evelyn like she didn't recognize what she was seeing. That's when Evelyn spoke, not loud, didn't need to be. Every word landed. "You're right, Caroline," she said, her eyes locked onto hers, hope, brief, desperate. "I do have a psychological problem." She nodded quickly. Yes, you do. We can fix this. We can." Evelyn didn't change her tone. "I have a compulsion," she continued. "An obsession with putting people who betray this country into federal prison." Her expression broke, not slowly, all at once. "And you," Evelyn said, "just became my cleanest case." Silence, absolute. Then the agents moved in. They pulled her hands behind her back. She didn't fight, didn't speak, didn't cry anymore. Just empty, cuffs locked, cold metal, same as Julian. Her father finally moved 1 step, then stopped. An agent approached him. "Marcus Vance," he said, "you are under investigation pending formal charges." Not arrested. Not yet, but close enough. Her father looked at Evelyn. For the first time that night, there was no control left in his expression. No strategy, no calculation, just realization. He had misjudged the only person in the room he thought he understood, and it cost him everything. The agents began escorting them out. Julian first, then Caroline. She didn't look back. Her father followed under watch. Her mother didn't move until someone told her to. The room slowly started breathing again. Quiet conversations, low voices, controlled reactions, but the damage was done. Not privately, not quietly, publicly, completely. Evelyn stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked off the stage. No applause, no announcement, no closure, because this wasn't an ending. It was a correction. And now everything else would follow. Evelyn signed the final report and didn't read it twice. You only double-check things you're unsure about. She wasn't. 1 month was enough to turn noise into facts and facts into consequences. Julian Mercer took a plea deal that didn't feel like one. 30 years, no early exit worth mentioning. Federal facility, high security, the kind of place where time doesn't pass, it just stacks. Caroline followed him down the same path. Different charges, same outcome. 30 years, no control, no leverage, no audience, just walls. Her father didn't go to prison. Not yet. They stripped his rank first. That part mattered more to him. General Marcus Vance became Marcus Vance overnight. No title, no authority, no uniform. Pension gone. Reputation gone. Every speech he ever gave about honor replayed on networks that used his name as a caution. He didn't attend any hearings, didn't speak publicly, didn't try to defend himself. He understood the difference between losing a battle and being removed from the map. Her mother disappeared for a while, not officially, just socially. No events, no appearances, no quiet charity work to soften perception. She went quiet because there was nothing left to manage. The house was sold within 3 weeks fast, below value. No one wanted to own something that had just been used as evidence. The story ran for exactly 9 days, then it stopped. That's how it works. Big scandal, controlled outrage, then silence. Not because people forget, because the system moves on. Evelyn didn't. She moved forward, different thing. DARPA headquarters doesn't look like what people expect. No big signs, no dramatic entrances, just clean lines and security that doesn't explain itself. Evelyn walked out the front doors just after noon. Clear sky, no noise, no cameras. That's why she chose this place. If someone showed up here, it wasn't for attention. It was for something else. She saw her before she spoke. Sitting on the concrete bench across from the entrance, clothes worn, not dirty, just reduced. Lydia Vance didn't know how to look small, so she looked unfinished instead. She stood up when she saw Evelyn. Too fast, like she thought she might turn around if she didn't move first. Evelyn, she stopped, didn't step closer, didn't step away, just stopped. She walked toward her, each step careful, measured, like she was approaching something fragile. That was new. "I've been waiting," she said. "I know." Her eyes searched Evelyn's face, looking for something familiar, something she could use. She didn't find it. "They won't listen to me," she said. "Your father, Caroline, this is going too far." Evelyn didn't answer. She stepped closer. "You have to fix this." "No," Evelyn said. Her expression tightened. "Evelyn, please," she said. "This isn't justice. This is punishment." "Yes," she shook her head quickly. "No, you don't understand. Caroline didn't know what she was doing. Julian controlled everything. She stopped. Evelyn held her gaze. "Don't rewrite it," she said. "I'm not." "You are." Silence, she tried again. "You can still help them," she said. "You can adjust your statement. You can clarify intent. People do it all the time." Evelyn almost smiled. "People who don't understand consequences do that," she said. Her voice broke slightly. "We're your family." There it was, the word again. Still trying to do the same job, still expecting a different result. Evelyn looked at her, really looked. Not the version she showed at events, not the one who managed rooms. The one standing in front of her now, tired, afraid, late. "You signed the papers," Evelyn said. She flinched. "Evelyn, you sat at that table," she continued. "You watched them bring me in. You didn't ask a single question." Her eyes filled. "I thought you didn't think," Evelyn said. "You agreed." That landed. She stepped back half an inch, then forward again, like she couldn't decide which direction made more sense. "We were trying to protect you," she said. Evelyn shook her head once. "No," she said. "You were protecting yourselves." Her voice dropped. "We didn't know. You didn't want to know." Silence again, longer this time, no easy line left, no angle left to take. She looked at Evelyn like she was running out of time because she was. "They're going to lose everything," she said. "They already did. You're just going to let that happen." "Yes." She stared at her, trying to find something to hold on to. "Anything, Evelyn," she said, softer now, almost pleading. "You can't be this cold." Evelyn reached into her jacket, pulled out a folded document. Clean copy, untouched. She held it for a second, then handed it to her. She took it automatically. Didn't look at it right away, then she did. Her hands started shaking before she finished the first line. Petition for psychiatric conservatorship. Her signature, her father's, Caroline's, all three. Clear, permanent, legal. She looked up at Evelyn, eyes wide. "That was," she started. "Yesterday," Evelyn said. She shook her head. "That was different." "No," she replied. "That was honest." Her grip tightened on the paper. "We were trying to help you." Evelyn let that sit there for a second. Then she answered, "Family isn't something you lock in a room when it becomes inconvenient." Her breathing got uneven. "Family isn't something you erase when it threatens your image." She didn't speak. "Family isn't something you ask back when you're out of options." The words landed exactly where they needed to. No volume, no anger, just final. She lowered her gaze to the paper again like it might say something else if she looked long enough. It didn't. Evelyn stepped back one step. That was enough. She didn't follow, didn't ask again, didn't try to stop her because now she understood. Not emotionally, structurally. There was no path back, no version of this where they returned to anything. The line wasn't broken. It was set, permanent. Evelyn turned and walked toward the vehicle waiting at the curb. Black SUV, reinforced. Engine already running. The driver didn't look at her. Didn't need to. The door opened. She stepped in, sat down. The door closed, solid, final. Through the tinted glass, she could still see her standing there, holding the paper, not moving, not calling out, just standing in the space where something used to exist. Then the vehicle pulled away, and she got smaller and smaller until she wasn't part of Evelyn's world anymore. Not removed, not erased, just outside the line she wasn't going to cross again. Evelyn sat in the back of the SUV and watched her reflection in the window for a second longer than she needed to. No uniform this time, no medals, just her. People think the hardest part was taking them down. It wasn't. The hard part was realizing none of it surprised her. Not really. Most people think betrayal is loud. It's not. It's quiet. It's small decisions repeated over time until they stop feeling like decisions. Caroline didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy her. She practiced it. Little things first, twisting stories, testing boundaries, seeing what she could get away with. And every time no one stopped her, she went further. Julian didn't become dangerous overnight either. He just kept choosing money over limits until there were no limits left. And her father, he didn't fall. He adjusted. That's what people don't understand. Betrayal isn't a moment. It's a pattern. And if you ignore the small versions, you're going to lose to the big one. So here's the truth. If someone crosses a small line easily, they're already showing you who they are. Believe that version early, not the one they explain later. Evelyn used to think being smart protected you. It doesn't. It just makes you better at explaining away what you don't want to see. She wasn't blind. She saw the inconsistencies, the money, the behavior, the way Caroline controlled conversations, the way Julian avoided specifics. She saw all of it. She just gave it the benefit of the doubt. Because it was family. Because it was easier to assume she was missing something than to accept what was actually there. That's how manipulation works. It doesn't feel like control. It feels like concern. It feels like someone telling you you're overreacting, like you're tired, like you're not seeing things clearly. And if you're not careful, you start agreeing not because they're right, because it's easier than pushing back. So here's the rule. Don't trust how someone explains themselves. Watch what they do when it matters. Behavior doesn't need translation. A lot of people are going to hear this story and think Evelyn was cold. That she walked away too easily, that she should have tried harder to fix things. That's fine. They're allowed to think that, but they're wrong. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're structure. And if you don't build them yourself, someone else will build them for you. Usually in a way that benefits them, not you. She didn't walk away because she stopped caring. She walked away because she understood exactly what she was dealing with. There's a difference. You don't owe loyalty to people who use it as a weapon. You don't owe access to people who try to control you. And you don't owe forgiveness to people who aren't sorry. That last one matters a lot because most people don't apologize. They negotiate. They look for a version of the situation where they don't lose everything. That's not accountability, that's strategy. And Evelyn wasn't interested in being part of someone else's damage control. People also misunderstand power. They think it's loud, aggressive, visible. It's not. Real power is quiet. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't need to convince anyone. It just executes. Evelyn didn't stand in that dining room and scream. She didn't try to prove anything in the moment. Because that's not how you win. You don't win arguments. You control outcomes. You gather information. You wait. You choose your timing. And when you act, you make sure it's final. If you're constantly reacting, you're already behind. Control the pace or someone else will. There's also a difference people like to ignore. Revenge and justice are not the same thing. Revenge is emotional. It's fast. It feels good for a second and then it's gone. Justice is structured. It takes time. It requires proof. It holds. Evelyn didn't destroy them. She exposed them. There's a difference. She didn't invent anything. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't need to. Everything they did was already there. All she did was make sure the right people saw it at the right time. If someone wrongs you, your first instinct will be to hit back. Don't. Pause, document, think. Because the moment you act without structure, you weaken your position. And the people who hurt you will use that every time. Walking away costs more than people admit. There's no clean version of it, no moment where everything feels resolved. You lose things: history, familiarity, versions of yourself that only existed in those relationships. That doesn't come back, but neither does the damage if you stay. So you choose comfort or clarity, control or chaos. There isn't a middle ground that lasts. Peace is expensive, but staying in something broken costs more, always. If you're listening to this and you recognize something, a person, a situation, a pattern that feels a little too familiar, pay attention. Not to what they say, not to what you hope is true, to what's actually happening. Set boundaries early, not when it's already out of control. Don't wait for proof that feels dramatic. Most of the time, the quiet evidence is enough. And don't confuse loyalty with obligation. They're not the same. Loyalty is earned. Obligation is imposed. Know the difference. Evelyn didn't regret what she did. Not for a second, but she didn't celebrate it either, because this wasn't a victory. It was a correction, something that should have happened a long time ago. She just stopped delaying it. People keep asking her if she misses them. She doesn't. She misses the idea of what they were supposed to be. That's different. And once you understand that difference, you stop trying to rebuild something that never actually existed. She looked out the window again as the city moved past. Same streets, same noise. Nothing changed except what she allowed into her life. That's the only part you ever really control. And once you take that seriously, everything else gets a lot simpler. Not easier, just clearer. And clear is enough. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs. But if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been in a position where people you trusted tried to silence you or make you doubt your own reality, remember this. You are not crazy for seeing what others choose to ignore. You are not wrong for demanding truth, and you are never obligated to protect people who would destroy you to protect themselves. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their own actions, even when those people are family, especially when those people are family. Thank you for listening. If this story gave you chills, if it made you think, if it made you feel something, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, take care of yourself. You deserve to be believed. You deserve to be free. You deserve justice.